Hello once again. My name's Alan Mayer. I'm a retired Anglican priest, and I'm taking us through the Bible, looking at the different genres of literature there and trying to understand what those who wrote the Bible meant us to understand. Today we are continuing to look at understanding creation and our place in it. And today we are at Matthew chapter 20, verses 1 to 16, the famous parable about the envious vineyard workers. This is what the kingdom of heaven is like. There was the master of a house who went out early in the morning to hire labourers for his vineyard. He agreed with the workers to pay them a denarius a day and sent them off to his vineyard. At 9 in the morning he went back and saw others standing in the marketplace idle. He said to them, "You too go into the vineyard, and I'll pay you fairly." And they went. He went out again at noon and at 3 and did the same thing. Then at about 5 o'clock he went out and found some others standing there and said to them, "What are you doing standing here idly all day?" They replied, "Nobody has hired us." He told them, "You go into my vineyard too." When evening came, the vineyard owner said to his bailiff, "Call the workers and pay them their wages. Begin with the last to start and finish with the first." When those hired at 5 came, each was paid a denarius. Now when those who started first came, they thought they would be paid more, but each of them also received 1 denarius. And when they got it, they complained to the owner, "Those who came last only worked 1 hour, and you've made them equal to us, who have worked hard all day in this scorching heat." But he replied to one of them, "My friend, I'm doing you no harm. We agreed, didn't we, for a denarius? Take what belongs to you and go. But it is my wish to give this to this latecomer the same as I gave you. It is quite legal for me to do what I like with my own property, isn't it? Or are you seeing evil in my goodness?" And Matthew's comment, "So the last will be first, and the first last." Don't mistake this parable for a lesson in labour relations. We in the developed world live in quite a different atmosphere where labour relations are regulated by law, and this kind of haphazard free-for-all, once so common, is now rarely seen. In New Testament times, around harvest time, this kind of scene would have been common, and those who depended for their livelihood on casual labour would have moved from one labour market to the next, hoping for work. Jesus is here nearing the peak of his teaching ministry, and he is having to work hard to convince the Jewish people, and particularly the scribes and Pharisees, that their air of superiority would not win them any favours with God. The parable is an allegory, which would have been familiar to his listeners. Isaiah in chapter 5, verses 1 to 7, had called Israel God's vineyard hundreds of years before. Now, Jesus presents his hearers with it anew, in a parable that is an explanation for his ministry to the poor and oppressed, that they are no less deserving than the righteous and pious in society. At its root is the message that ultimately all who receive God's goodness receives all God's goodness, rich and poor alike, whole and sick alike, ritually clean and unclean alike, saint and sinner alike. It is not the perfection of our worship and service that earns us God's reward, but God's undeserved generosity to us all. Tomorrow we look at a parable of Jesus that tries to explain why some people get it and some don't. See you tomorrow.